Right then, we're back again. Hodling Room, back for another episode. We've got Mike. How's it going?
Good, good, thanks. How are you?
I'm not bad. I'm not bad. Now, you've been looking into Bitcoin inheritance.
I have, yeah. I had my inheritance call with the Bitcoin way the other day, and yeah, it kind of made me realize that how you don't need multi-sig from like a third party. So because I was really looking into Casa as well. So because I want, I, you hear multi-sig thrown around, don't you? So you're like, that's how I should secure it. Surely I need multi-signature. And also inheritance, like how are you supposed to like pass this to, say you just get hit by a bus, whatever. How is your family or whoever supposed to get access to this? So I didn't really understand how you could do that without using like a third party such as Casa, or there's other ones as well that exist. But obviously the issue is with using any third party is that you are giving what is KYC for a start. So if data got leaked or whatever from that, then that's an issue. But I mean, most of your Bitcoin is probably KYC'd anyway, but it's not quite in the same way. But they would literally as well, from my understanding, from my limited understanding, I believe that they would even be able to see like how much you own, because they would actually hold one of the keys as well.
Yeah.
Not that they would ever, they can't do anything with it. So a multi-sig is basically, there'll be three. So you've got your 12 words, whatever it is. So that's one set of keys. A multi-sig works by, there's basically three sets of keys. So three sets of 12 words. They would hold on to one. You would have two, but obviously you would need to find someone else that you can trust who could hold one of the keys. Because there's no point if you just keep them both in one location.
Yeah.
It literally defeats the point of multi-sig.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So obviously you could maybe like hide them in different places, but it's, if there's some sort of disaster, whatever it is, some crazy fire or whatever, then again, like I say, it defeats the point. Whereas if you lose with multisig, if you lose one, if you lose your keys, it doesn't make a difference because you've still got the other two. So you can still, that person who has them can't do anything with it, and you still have full access to it as long as you can get hold of the other two, basically. So
you need two of three.
You need two or three, but I think you can even do three or five. You can make it as complex as you want.
And is it any two of three, or is there like a primary key? Like,
I believe it's any two or three. So like BitKey, remember like the rock?
I heard of it. Yeah.
So I actually bought one at Prague because I was it's Jack Dorsey's one. So it's basically like a rock, which is one set of keys, your phone app, which is another set of keys, and they hold one. So that's another set. And it's the same way. So that is multi-sig. So there's three, but you obviously that was the thing that was putting me off it though. It was always like, but they hold one. Like I just don't like this idea of someone else holding one. I mean, it is very, very, very likely not to be an issue because they can't do anything with it. Like, you need two keys to do anything, and they only hold one. So, but yeah, that's
So, what's the benefit of having? Let's say you've got all your Bitcoin in a 2 of 3 multi-sig. You've got one bit key. Why not just have like 2 bit keys and your phone? Why give it to any company at all? That's what I don't understand.
Well, I think that's just kind of how BitKey works.
Okay.
And same with Casa, like, so you pay them, I think it's like $25 or something like that a month. I think there's a more expensive one that you can do as well. But they would also sort out the inheritance. So say you get hit by a bus, then you leave it to whoever you're leaving it to, and you give them the contact details to them, and I think they need like a 6-month, they need a death certificate, they need to wait 6 months, and then they get access to it, and then they will just help you. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it is quite techie. Like, it's for someone that isn't into Bitcoin, it's not that easy for them just to be able to.
And I assume that the company doesn't know the location of they'll know your location if you hold the first set, but they won't know where the location of the second set is.
Exactly. Well,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, would they know your? I suppose maybe. I don't know. Depends how much. You don't have to hold it in the location where you live. Like, people. Like, we know people that have seed phrases and they've done extreme measures on like where they are, sort of thing. But
Yeah.
it was just really interesting going through it because there was basically
Which includes burying a steel plate in the garden and forgetting
and
where
then
it
forgetting
was,
where it is. Yeah,
and
exactly.
then buying a metal detector to find it again.
So yeah, I mean, everyone has. Yeah, I think it's just more coming up with your own system. Basically, is the bottom line, and spreading it out. So basically, if something gets found, nothing can happen.
Hmm.
Nothing can get moved. So I
Yeah.
think the biggest thing, the biggest thing I've learned from going through the Bitcoin way is the passphrase. So the 25th word. So if you've got
Yeah.
24, you've got your 24 words. So
Hmm.
that's your private key.
Hmm.
If someone finds that, they literally can't do anything unless they have the 25th word because that's
Yeah.
where the Bitcoin is, sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
and you can create as many 25th
Exactly.
words as you
Or the
want as
26th
well.
word, or
Yeah,
the
or like
27th. You could have
yeah,
a
there's other things
wallet.
like that. I don't actually know how you do that, but yeah, I'm sure
Yeah, I'm not sure, but from
in
what I
a
know,
similar
you can
way.
have like a honeypot. So you've got your 24 words, then you might even have a bit of Bitcoin in there, but then you've got the 25th word, which is a completely separate wallet,
Well,
and
what
then
what I would know how to do is like I could just create two 25th words, and then
yeah,
I could have, like you say, I could have a honeypot of like,
mm,
so here's some enough
hmm,
to maybe deter someone,
hmm,
and then you
yeah,
could have a separate one,
you
and
can
then
have
that's yeah,
unlimited 25th words, I
yeah,
guess, on the
yeah,
same seed
and you
phrase.
can do, so then if you wanted to have wallets for your kids or your business or whatever
Hmm.
it is, but the issue is each time you create a 25th word, that is basically like a whole new set of issues of like how you distribute it, how you store it, so it's not quite as simple. I mean, it is as simple as creating as many 20. You could just create as many as you want, but each time you do it, you also have to be able to manage it, and it's almost like creating a whole new set of private keys that you then have to
Hmm.
distribute. And I think it just starts getting complex basically when you start doing too much. But
So
yeah,
how does multisig link in with inheritance? Like I
it
would have
doesn't.
assumed it
It
doesn't.
doesn't.
Okay,
No,
fair
I would
enough.
say they're two separate things really. So multi-sig is just in the sense that it means you can never move your Bitcoin with one set of. So if someone was to find your seed phrase, your private keys, they can't do anything
Hmm.
because they've only got one out of the three. So, and they need two to be able to do anything. So that's the big advantage of multi-sig.
Hmm.
Whereas what I have learned through this process as well is that you don't even need multi-sig to basically still do that. Whereas I'm like, you don't use multi-sig. So I don't need to go to my parents' house and find the other one every time I want to be able to transfer it. Like I still can have access to it, or I don't need to ask permission from a third party company
Hmm.
to be able to move a Bitcoin, which again could just lead to all the same issues as to what the current monetary system is. Of like, it's a centralized company that
Mm.
could just get, who knows what's going to happen, like with
Yeah.
governments banning and who knows basically. So that's kind of what was putting me off from using a third party. Like I say, I think it's very, very, very unlikely that anything like that will happen. I'm just, I don't know, just the Bitcoiner in me and the skeptical side of me is just like, I want to just have control, sort of
Hmm.
thing.
So, what is the best inheritance thing? And I mean, I would have surely thought, because I know that there's, I think it might have been with BitKey where you set up wallets for your family, and then when you die, it can go into their wallets automatically. But if surely, say like you've got some gold under your bed. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, wouldn't they just find it's like, okay, well, this is mine now? Like, why do you necessarily have to move the wallets or?
No, I think it's just more how they get access to it. That's the thing. really. So
Right.
it's
If
just
you
it's
if you
creating
don't,
those steps.
okay, fine.
What I find is really awkward though, and is like I don't know how comfortable I feel about talking about this. Like
Well, that's fair enough. That's fair
publicly.
enough. Yeah. I mean,
Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, you don't want to just tell everyone what your system is or whatever,
yeah, for sure.
but equally, I would want to know if I was on the other side. So it's really it's this like this real delicate balancing thing to it. And I think
Yeah.
I think the key thing is though is that everyone should have their own system
Mm.
as to how they do it. And I think the key thing is as well is that you should spread things apart. So
Mm.
if one thing was found, they can't access it. If your 25th word was found, they can't access it. If your seed phrase was found, they can't access it. So whatever the thing is that they find, there's nothing that can be done, basically.
Do you know if inheritance tax is a thing with Bitcoin in the UK? For example, say you've got 100 grand's worth of Bitcoin, and that goes to, say you die and it goes to your kids. Will they then have to pay tax on that? Like, is that a
I
thing?
think it's very I don't know if unregulated is the right word, but unknown is the right word.
They
Like,
haven't
it's
got to
just
that point. Yeah.
there's no rules as far as I'm
Okay.
aware at the moment, and technically it's a bearer asset. So whoever owns it, whoever same as gold, like whoever holds the gold owns
Yeah.
the gold. It's not like I don't know if you passed on gold to your kids, would there be tax? I
Or
guess there probably
or
would
property
because it's a bit more.
like a house. Like say
Well, property is not a bearer asset. Like
Okay.
technically you don't really own it. Like, if you stop paying your council tax, you will very quickly find out who actually owns it.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
So it's it's whereas like cash, gold, and Bitcoin is technically a bearer asset. Like whoever holds the keys, whoever holds the gold, whoever holds the cash
Yeah.
owns it. So I don't know is the simple answer. It probably would be, but I mean there is quite a high tax threshold on. I can't remember the exact numbers for inheritance, but it's something like in the UK at the minute. It's something like, is it 500,000 or 1,000,000 is
It's
tax
something.
free?
Yeah, I heard that with the
So
farmers, they were reducing it, weren't they, to 1 million or something like that.
yeah,
But for a farmer, that's not much because they've
yeah,
got land.
exactly.
So
I
that
mean,
would
yeah,
be
and probably
substantial.
like a combine harvester is probably
Yeah.
500,000 or something. So
Yeah.
depending on
Even
what
though
kind
they
of
probably
farmer you are.
they make about 20 grand profit.
Yeah,
Which is
exactly, exactly. So yeah, but anyway,
interesting. Very, very interesting. Now we're still working through the Bitcoin standard. Should I pull that up?
yes, let's do it.
We're
We're
well
getting to
over
the good bit
halfway.
as well, aren't we?
We are. We're on digital money at the minute, so let me pull this bit up. Now I think we were at Bitcoin's shared ledger. Can you see that bit?
Yeah.
Shall I read, or do you want me to? Or shall I read, or do you want me to read?
Do
Do you want to read on it? Go on then. Right then. So just stop me at any point. We've got some good gravy in this bit. So Bitcoin's shared ledger can be likened to the rhinestones of Yap Island discussed in Chapter 2, in that the money does not actually move for transactions to take place. Whereas in Yap, the islanders would meet to announce the transfer of the ownership of a stone from one person to the other, and the entire town would know who owned which stone. In Bitcoin, members of the network would broadcast their transaction to all network members, who would verify that the sender has the balance necessary for the transaction and credit it to the recipient. To the extent that the digital coins exist, they are simply entries on a ledger, and a verified transaction changes the ownership of the coins on the ledger from the sender to the recipient. Ownership of the coins is assigned through public addresses, not by name of the holder, and access to the coins owned by an address is secured through the ownership of a private key, a string of characters analogous to a password. This is something that took me a while to get my head around, actually, when I first started getting into it, because I used to use a ledger live, and I was like, right, so the Bitcoin are on this USB,
Yeah.
and then it took me a while. I was like, no, they're not. This is just a device to sign the transactions.
Yeah.
The Bitcoin they're not stored anywhere. It's just
Exactly.
It's kind of everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It's,
Yeah.
It's
That's
almost
so
like,
funny you said those words. I've
yeah,
just replied to someone in the comments, and it was a really good question. And he basically, well, it wasn't really good. It was taking a pit. Am I allowed to swear? I can't remember. Taking a pee.
yeah,
But he he said, so it's basically because I think I'd said in the video, Bitcoin is everywhere and nowhere at once. It's like, oh, so
right.
Bitcoin is like God, like just taking the pee. And I was like,
Hmm.
well, actually, no, it's just open source code. And then I
Yeah,
just said, which if you do a little bit of digging, like as in I've just gone to Google and typed in what is open source code about, is it everywhere and nowhere? And it gave a really good reply actually. And basically
yeah,
like it is everywhere because, such as the internet, 90 odd percent of the internet uses Linux, which is open source code.
hmm,
So the internet is everywhere. Like
hmm,
everybody's house, like every Wi-Fi, like it's all from open source code. Whereas technically it's nowhere because there's no physical one location as
yeah,
where it is stored or where you can switch it on or off. Or
hmm,
so it is everywhere and nowhere, and it's abstract, and you can't
yeah,
touch it. You can't touch the internet. You can't touch Bitcoin. So this is,
yeah.
I
It's
think, this is the
abstract.
thing that's so hard for us to understand, unless you are like a developer or a coder and you've come from like that kind of
Hmm.
world where that just makes more sense.
Yeah, it's on the network, so there's no yeah, yeah. I can't put it better than that. It's hard to get your head around because it's almost like it's transcendental, it's esoteric, it's abstract, it's just you have access to something, and you have access to an entry on a ledger. It's like, well, where is that ledger? It's like, well, it's across 100,000 different nodes running this software. Like it's on everybody's node. It's on
Do you know what that just
everybody's
made me think?
computer.
It's like energy, as
Hmm.
in, and I've heard this before. Bitcoin is just stored
Is
energy.
energy. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, basically everything. When you think of it from getting in a woo woo mindset here,
yeah.
if you think of everything as a form of energy, and
Hmm.
energy just, you can't destroy energy, you can only transfer it. And
Hmm.
so it is very similar to like the
Yeah.
concept of energy. Like energy is everywhere and nowhere, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's quite interesting.
And
Just what you
yeah,
said there made me think of that.
and now we've got a currency which
It's backed by
is
energy.
backed by energy rather than backed by government war, government power, or do you know what I mean? Like people just, this is money.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that doesn't really work. Whereas the Rhinestone's physical heft makes their divisibility highly impractical, Bitcoin faces no such problem. Bitcoin's supply is made up of a maximum of 21 million coins, each of which is divisible into 100 million satoshis, making it highly saleable across scales. Whereas the Yapese stones were only practical for a few transactions in a small island with a small population who knew each other very well, Bitcoin has far superior salability across space because the digital ledger is accessible by anyone worldwide with an internet connection. What keeps Bitcoin nodes honest individually is that if they were dishonest, they would be discovered immediately, making dishonesty exactly as effective as doing nothing but involving a higher cost. Collectively, what prevents a majority from colluding to be dishonest is that if they were to succeed in compromising the integrity of the ledger of transactions, the entire value proposition of Bitcoin would be destroyed and the Bitcoin token's value would collapse to nothing. Collusion costs a lot, but it would itself lead to its loot becoming worthless. In other words, Bitcoin relies on economic incentives, making fraud far costlier than its rewards. That's interesting as well. I was reading something this morning about some kind of like top NSA guy years ago when he first started looking into Bitcoin. Um, he he's basically commented and said the more he looked into it, the more he realized that every possible attack had already been pre-thought about, and the solution was already in place in the Bitcoin code. Like Satoshi had already preempted all of these possible attacks, and the solution is already built into the system.
Who said
Like
this?
I'll have to. It's a book down there. I mean, let me go and get it real quick. I'll get the quote. Right, let me try and find this quote. It's basically this book's called "The Devil Takes Bitcoin," and it's this like journalist who's looking into the whole Mount Gox, like Mark Carpella's thing. Let me try and see if I can find the. So, a former NSA analyst said he was sure that Bitcoin could be hacked, but after spending weeks looking at the code, realized it would be nearly impossible. Quote, "It was made by the most paranoid cyber geek in the world. It had to be somebody at least familiar with the basic tenets of cyber warfare. Every possible attack has been anticipated and countered in advance."
That's pretty great. So who is this guy? Sorry,
This was a
he's
quote
just like a
by
developer.
Tigran Gambarian, former I. Oh no, it's not him. Hang on, let me try and find the guy. It doesn't say his name, but the book is by Jake Adelstein. The Devil Takes Bitcoin. It's only just come out. It's quite interesting actually.
The Devil Takes Bitcoin. Interesting. But yeah, I mean, that really does kind of sum up how I got to being like fully orange pilled, because I literally did think it was a scam for so long. I thought it was. I just couldn't believe that it could be what I thought it could be, and I was like, there has to be a way to break this. There has to. And the same thing. Like I'm not a coder or a developer by any means, but or not even a little bit. But I I did just keep on attacking it, like from different theory. Like just kept like writing more and more different ways that it could fail, or could break, or could not work. And it was just like, but like, for that to happen, and then just going down the rabbit hole each time, it was just like, but it's not. It just seems like it's not going to. Like the only thing that I can still see today, the only possible way is if it just gets centralized.
Yeah.
And as long as it stays decentralized, basically, as long as more and more people keep running nodes and more people keep self-custody in it, there really is no way that it can break, kind of thing. And it's kind of already been proved. Obviously, it's only been 16 years, which isn't that long in the grand scheme of things, but it has constantly been attacked. I think this is the thing that a lot of people new to Bitcoin miss, and they just think, oh, it just hasn't, they haven't stopped it yet. And it's like, no, they've constantly been trying to stop it the whole time. Like constant banning, constant regulations affecting it, that, just there's been constant people that have been trying to stop it or hack it, or it's never stopped. And it will continue because it's got the biggest bounty on it ever. What is it now? Like $2 trillion if you can successfully crack it. But
as it says here, even if they were to do that, then that they don't get that $2 trillion because it becomes worthless.
Exactly.
But there's still an incentive for the banks to kill it because they want their Ponzi scheme to continue. But there's a few things, like you were saying, self-custody is important, centralization. This is what Simon Dixon goes on about. He's like, the attack is, instead of holding your own Bitcoin and using it, is buying these kind of TradFi, tax-free, ETFs and ETNs, and whilst BlackRock holds all of it. That's an issue. I was also gone.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think you have to really dig into that point, because it's about how does BlackRock holding it actually kill it? And it's nothing to do with BlackRock holding it. It's because then it's the fact that so few people have a say. So if so few people run a node, then basically, let's just say BlackRock is the only node that's running, then they have complete voting power. They can do a fork and change the rules completely, and no one can have a vote in it. Whereas if BlackRock is just one node out of currently about 100,000, if you go by Luke Dash's tool, then that there's basically no vote. It's the equivalent of having no vote at all, because you can't do anything with one vote. You need the mass consensus to agree on something. But I think this is where the real issue happens, though, is that if they control enough of like the monetary value of it, and then they choose to move to whatever rules that they want to, miners will always follow the money, because miners are always going to be incentivized by money, because otherwise they can't keep the lights on, they can't keep going, sort of thing. So they have to, again, from a free market first principle, the miners has to be incentivized by money. And anyone that thinks that means they're greedy or whatever doesn't understand free market economics. Like that is as purely how they have to work. Like they won't be able to keep doing what they're doing. So we want them to be incentivized as well. We want them to actually be able to keep the lights on. And arguably, even if they don't, even if they do, if the hash rate drops by 50%, like if China gets bans that when they ban the mining in 2021, it just gets eaten up by other places, because they're like, oh, now this actually makes it profitable. So
for sure.
it's sort of like, it really is win-win either way. If the hash rate keeps going up, it's getting more and more secure, more and more decentralized. If it drops, then it makes it more open to plebs and normal people,
home mining and that kind of stuff,
which again makes it more decentralized. So it's There
was another article I was reading this morning on the untraceableddigitaldissident.com, and this was talking about KYC and how KYC is also another kind of attack vector. Shall I share the screen for this article?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can pull this one up. It's only short, but it's quite interesting. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So this is on Untraceable Digital Dissident. So let me see who wrote this actually. It was a guy called Ghost. Now Ghost is a really interesting chap. I follow him on Noster. I put out a post not long ago saying, in terms of privacy, what should I look into? And one of them said, follow Ghost on Noster, and he's like hardcore privacy guy, very interesting stuff. So he wrote it. So it basically says KYC is the real threat to Bitcoin privacy, not some future ban or CBDC. It's already here, embedded in every exchange sign up and ID upload. This article exposes how Know Your Customer, KYC, quietly built a surveillance dragnet beneath the surface of crypto adoption, and why exiting now is the only way to preserve sovereignty. Originally published in Bitcoin Magazine, later republished by Zero Hedge. This is the original version. The threat isn't coming, it's already here, and it didn't arrive through a nationwide ban or an emergency executive order. It quietly showed up with a checkbox and a terms of service agreement. While the influencers make noise about CBDCs and paper Bitcoin, the real control system has already been deployed, KYC. Not dramatic, not dystopian, just regulated, normalized, and accepted. But compliance isn't neutral, it's the infrastructure of financial control, and if you're still handing over your ID to stack sats, you're not buying freedom, you're financing your own cage. This sounds a bit like did you ever watch that Adam Livingstone guy on YouTube? Did you ever watch him?
Yeah. The guy who talks really quick.
He's quite intense, and this sounds like his kind of thing.
It does, yeah.
You're not buying freedom, you're financing your own cage.
It does.
The real attack vector. KYC regulations are marketed as a hedge against money laundering and fraud. The framing is safety. The reality is traceability. The moment you attach your identity to Bitcoin through an exchange sign-up, a utility bill, a passport upload, you forfeit the very autonomy that Bitcoin was designed to preserve. It's not about what you're doing, it's about who you are. Once that link is made, every transaction becomes searchable, timestamped, and admissible. This isn't a theory, it's how the system is already working. Canada froze bank accounts based on political donations. The UK arrests protesters using facial recognition. The US executes geofence warrants without individual suspicion. Add KYC to that apparatus and you've built a turnkey surveillance machine. No subpoenas, no charges, just silent blacklists and frozen withdrawals. Didn't you find it odd that they arrested the developers of mixers like Whirlpool and Tornado Cash instead of criminals that use them? And also, more recently, what was the other one? Samurai.
Yeah.
Governments didn't need to outlaw Bitcoin, they just needed to know who's using it. The combination of centralized exchanges, KYC records, and behavioral analytics turns every Bitcoin purchase into a breadcrumb trail. Every withdrawal from Coinbase or Kraken or Strike becomes part of a profile logged, indexed, and stored. When regulators talk about compliance, this is what they mean: usable data pipelines, sanitized, labeled UTXOs, a fully mapped ecosystem of wallets tied to real names and IP addresses. What they're building isn't about stopping crime, it's about preemptively labeling dissent. The most dangerous part of KYC is that it doesn't look dangerous. There's no siren, no red alert, just a few forms, a phone verification, maybe a bonus if you sign up today. But each form you complete feeds the machine, not just for you, but for everyone you interact with. KYC isn't surveillance, it's contagious. A single identity linked wallet poisons the privacy of every address it touches. Chain analysis firms don't need to know everyone, they just need to know someone. Once that anchor point is set, mapping becomes mathematics. You're not stacking sats, you're stacking evidence. This is the accumulation phase, the calm before the enforcement. We're in the same pre-crackdown posture we saw before the war on cash. The pattern is familiar: normalize surveillance, demonize privacy, criminalize autonomy. The result? Most users walk themselves into a trap, not under threat, but under convenience. The just-in-case crowd, the ones who signed up, KYC'd, and hope it wouldn't matter, are already compromised. Not because they did something wrong, but because they let someone else decide what's wrong. And once that line moves, they're already inside it. But they can't stop me from moving my Bitcoin and transacting peer-to-peer. Quote, no one wants blacklisted coins. They will be radioactive and useless. What real privacy requires. There's no affiliate link for real privacy, no app store solution, no 10% discount for using your ID. It looks like discipline, friction, small decisions that don't scale. Buying peer-to-peer instead of custodial, mining to clean wallets, using tools that don't log your metadata, walking away from platforms that promise speed in exchange for obedience. It's not glamorous, but it's the difference between ownership and permission. Final thought. Bitcoin was never supposed to be polite. It was a way out. But as we normalize compliance in exchange for access, we risk turning that exit ramp into a regulated channel. KYC is not a bureaucratic detail. It's the quiet kill switch for sovereignty. It doesn't matter how many sats you stack if every one of them is logged, tagged, and ready for blacklist. So ask yourself, what does it mean to own something? If the answer starts with a government ID, you're already losing. No name, no compromise, no delay. Build the exit while you still can. That was written by Ghost.
It's interesting, isn't it? What's your take on that?
Kind of agree with him, to be fair. Very interesting. I mean, I did a video last week about KYC, the benefits of KYC versus non-KYC.
Yeah.
And one of my things was, it depends what kind of Bitcoiner you are, I think. If you're kind of like if you're one of these finance bros like Sailor, and you're just looking to invest and you might, and diversify your portfolio, and, you've got some stocks and a pension and a bit of gold and a bit of Nvidia, a bit of Bitcoin, a bit of Ethereum, whatever, then you're probably not bothered because it's just an investment to you that you'll sell for profit or whatever. But if you're more along the lines of like the cypherpunks, you want freedom, privacy, separation of money from state, which was the original ethos behind Bitcoin, then it makes sense that you would go non KYC. But one of the main risks with KYC is the whole data leak thing. Like, my first little bit I bought was from Coinbase, and there was a data leak with Coinbase, and I get emails from them all the time, like phishing emails that are allegedly from Coinbase, but they're not, being like, oh, you need to verify your account, click on this link, kind of thing. So somewhere out there, my information, my documents with all of the Bitcoin that I've bought from the KYC exchange is out there somewhere. So some dark web sleuth will know exactly, how much everybody's got from these
So what is
data leaks.
what's the solution?
Well, you can buy from non KYC exchanges. I did look into this as well. It's a lot. I found it a lot more complex, but some some people, this is sacrilege saying it, but some people have just moved to different coins like Monero. Like I listened to a Monero podcast called Monero Talk, and they were Bitcoiners, but they were very privacy focused, and they wanted complete privacy.
Interesting.
And now they're full on Monero heads,
So
which is
I've never heard of anyone that has gone from understanding Bitcoin to a shitcoin.
well, yeah. I mean, this is why I find it interesting to listen to these other podcasts because
Yeah.
I think it depends what you want. Like, people give Andreas Antonopoulos a hard time because he's into Ethereum, right? But he's not an idiot. This is the thing,
But
right?
also, is he anymore? Like, this is what I don't really know.
Yeah, he is.
Is he?
Like, he is. And
But he's still mainly Bitcoin, I'm guessing.
yeah, I think so. But it depends on your utility.
He's
Like
just interested in the use
he
case.
talks about yeah. I mean, he talks about Ethereum because it's good for smart contracts and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he basically says if that's your utility, if that's what you want, then Ethereum is probably better for you, right? Whereas some of these Monero heads, if privacy is your thing, I can see why they're attracted to Monero because it is private.
Yeah.
It does work in that regard. However, it doesn't have the network effect like Bitcoin. It doesn't have the scarcity like Bitcoin does. So I think it depends. But at the same time, we know people that are big into privacy as well, and they use Bitcoin, but they buy it non KYC. They can use things like, coin joins and mixers and these kind of things to anonymize their use. And just like it was saying in the article, you can see why the state puts these developers in jail that create open source software that add privacy to Bitcoin. Because, I mean, that's a deadly combination to the state.
Yeah. I mean, my understanding is that the solution will come eventually from a layer two. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, but then that will have to be centralized and yada, yada, yada. But, I don't know if you know much about Fediment.
I've heard of it.
But yeah, I think basically the core idea is that like transactions are like hidden within the federation or whatever they call it. And so you join something called a mint, I think. And it basically means then I think it kind of has to also use Lightning as well. So it's kind of mixture of that. But it basically means then it creates privacy, which is kind of like the point. So then it's just kind of, I don't know, from where I stand on it is that I see Bitcoin as a protocol. And so and it's the infrastructure, I think, is the massive part to get your head around about a protocol. So I did quite a bit of research into the internet a while ago. And so it was, what was it, in 1969, roughly, I think it was the ARPA, whatever it was.
Yeah.
That was the protocol, that was the rules. That's kind of like the Bitcoin white paper. It's like, these are the rules for how the internet works. And then it wasn't until the 90s where, oh my God, my brain is gone. What is the
TCP
IP came about, which then basically created another layer on top of the internet. So on top of the protocol, and that layer is what gave so much of the access that we now have today. And this is why it was only really in the 90s where things started taking off for the internet. And so that's kind of how I see it as well. For example, like the Lightning network only came out, was it in 17 or 21? Was it it was one of the upgrades. It was either SegWit or Taproot. I think it was SegWit, but
Yeah.
then Taproot helped to think a bit with it as well. But also Taproot helped with the privacy as well to some extent. But when Lightning has come along, it has now, like, as in every time that I've ever bought Bitcoin out and about, that has been using Lightning. So every time I've used Bitcoin in the real world, it's been on Lightning, which is technically a
Hmm.
layer two.
Hmm.
But equally, then once I've done that, I can just, once you've accumulated X amount of Bitcoin, whatever is enough for you, then you transfer that back to the base layer, to
Hmm.
Bitcoin layer, back to your cold custody on a hard wallet,
Hmm.
and it's still Bitcoin. Do you know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
was only possible on Bitcoin because it's so secure and it's so decentralized because of the amount of miners, because of the amount of nodes.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas I think that's it. I mean, didn't Monero even just have like a
Yeah.
51% attack quite
Yeah, it
recently,
did.
which
Yeah.
literally proves the point of what I'm trying to
Exactly.
say here is like it's not secure enough. It's vulnerable. Whereas if you just create one really decentralized secure thing, you can add layers on top to get whatever it is that you want. So if
Hmm.
it is privacy, that's where
Yeah.
I'm standing. And I mean, this guy, I've just been reading through that article again, and I don't think he's mentioned anything about layer twos. He sort of mentions a bit about like P2P purchases and self mining and that sort of stuff, but I don't know. And he's obviously got a far better understanding. But then equally, I guess if privacy is the key thing that you want, when it is on a layer two, technically is going to be centralized. So you
Well,
are,
he talks on that article about blacklisted UTXOs, and I don't understand blacklisted UTXOs. Like, you can again, because it's permissionless, you can still spend them if you wish. Like, you can't blacklist. Who's
yeah.
who's blacklisting
I
a?
remember a while ago people were sort of saying about how you could potentially have specific Bitcoin what was from a drug company, and then you're
Yeah,
not going to be able to spend it. But like,
I've heard
I
this.
don't know. I
Yeah,
feel like you just stick that in CoinJoy and mix it all up, and then no one knows
exactly.
anymore. Like,
Well,
so I don't
w-
know. I'm not sure
as
what it
as
means.
as the book Bitcoin Standard was saying, and that book I quoted as well, you basically can't stop it. Like, people and governments have tried to stop it. You can't stop it. So what are the attack vectors? Well, BlackRock centralizing the Bitcoin and offering you some kind of wrapped tax-free product, which is called Bitcoin. That seems to be an attack vector. KYC and everything seems to be this attack vector that he's talking about. So basically, having institutions and the state tracking and tracing everything, and you can tell that they hate privacy on chain because they put the developers of privacy tools in jail.
Mm.
But still, I think
Okay.
again, when you're dealing with open source software, it's like, how could you possibly stop that, because the technology exists. So again, um, they're not kill shots. Does that make sense? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I, I mean, I didn't see him say this in here, but I've just run it through AI, and he says that it says that not according to this author, you couldn't do CoinJoin because you already have KYC'd coins tied to your name. Then you send them to a mixer, and now you're flagged as someone actively trying to hide something. This makes you more suspicious, not less. But I didn't see. I can't find anything where he said that. Did you?
No,
I don't know if AI is just making something up there, but
but I mean, I guess it makes sense because, I mean, if you've been KYC'd and you send, let's say you buy one Bitcoin through a KYC exchange, right, and then you send it through a mixer,
yeah.
they're still going to say, okay, we can see that you've disposed of this Bitcoin, so you owe us tax on disposal of that.
So didn't you find it odd that they arrested the developers of mixers like Whirlpool and Tornado Cash instead of the criminals that used them? That is odd, to be fair.
Hmm.
It suggests using these tools puts a target on your back. But that doesn't suggest that using these tools put a target on your back. That suggests that who makes the tools puts a target on their back.
I mean, yeah, somebody on that last video I put out, somebody did comment and they said one of the benefits of KYC Bitcoin is that if you were to ever take a loan out against it, which
Yeah, but
some people are doing.
that's very fiat thinking.
Well, exactly,
When
yeah.
you really dig into the whole loan thing, I think that's a whole other attack vector on itself. Like it's
Well, it is because they want you to default on it and
yeah,
take your
they
coins.
just
Yeah,
want to get hold of your coin. It's another way for them to get
yeah.
hold of your coins. Like, and I've, to be honest, I've really fought all of this thinking for so long. I've always been like, no, and like this whole. If I read this article, probably even just a few months ago, I'd have been like, oh, it's just some over
Paranoid.
paranoid
Yeah.
guy who really likes privacy and it doesn't really matter that much. But the more that I'm digging into it, the more I'm like, oh god, yeah, this is. I actually think that there might be a point to this.
Oh, definitely.
But the way I see it though is that as long as there are some people that are still acting like the cypherpunk philosophy, and people that
Hmm.
are still mining and still keeping non KYC coins as much as possible, then I don't think it matters overall. I think the threat is if all of these cypherpunks and super private focused people, if they just all abandoned their thinking and were like, oh, it doesn't really matter now, that is a real threat. But I guess the point is of making this kind of content is exactly for that point, is to try and just make people a little bit more conscious about privacy and things. I'm sure he's not. I'm sure he doesn't believe that everyone's going to start non KYCing Bitcoin, or because it's just not. It's not feasible. It's not realistic. You're not going to have like your grandma going to be going on to Bisq and buying peer-to-peer Bitcoin. Like it's just
Yeah.
not going to happen,
Well,
and
this
they
is what he
know
said.
that.
He
But
said
I think the
it's,
point is that there needs to be, and Jeff Booth talks about this a lot, is like the 2.5 to 10% of the unbribable minority, like that group of people who are not going to cheat no matter what. They're going to run a node. They're going to look for attack vectors exactly like this guy is, and they're going to foresee them and actively try and prevent them, rather than reactively being like, oh crap, we need to do this. It's there's a lot of proactive people in Bitcoin basically, and the more people there are, the better, sort of thing. The more people that are trying to stay a bit private and are running a node, they are self-custodying, all of that, it really, really matters.
it's something to think about.
It is. Anyway,
The whole privacy thing is a whole nother deep rabbit hole.
yeah, and to be honest, for me recently, it's just been too much. Like,
It's a whole new world, isn't it? Really?
yeah, it's just it's too much for me right now. I think sometimes you just have to be like, okay, this is my rabbit hole at the minute.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay in my rabbit hole for now until I'm content enough.
Yeah.
Whereas like, I still feel like I'm way out my depth sometimes. So
Yeah. Well, it's one step at a time. I think. Like
exactly,
for convenience's sake, everybody has kind of got to the point now. Oh, it just seemed to have everybody's got an iPhone and everybody's got Gmail and everybody's got this. You've walked yourself into this bog of convenience,
yeah,
and then suddenly you've gone, oh, actually, this bog is probably not good overall for me.
yeah.
Now I need to try and walk the other direction,
Backtrack, yeah.
backtrack. But I've been walking into this bog for 25 years.
Yeah, so it's going to be a
So
long. So it's
not
almost
going
like,
to
what's
be
the point? I'm just going to lie down. I'm just going to take a nap.
or just think,
Rather than-
right, well, it's gonna take a while for me to walk back through the bog, and even if I do walk out the bog, I've still got all this mud on me, which is going to take a while to get off. Like it's a whole new journey of
Yeah,
and relearning things, as he says in the article, moving away from convenience,
that's it.
you know, because just buying from Strike is super convenient, super easy, but
Yeah,
as he says there, the downside is You've just you've doxed yourself.
So maybe this is the fiat Mike talking here, but I personally do think for the vast majority of people anyway, it makes sense just to have some sort of dollar cost averaging automatic KYC thing set up, just because we are all, we spoke about this before, about like fear and greed and human emotions. We're all terrible at doing the right thing at the right time. So the more you can automate and not have to think about, the better. But then I do also think at the same time, it's wise to maybe start thinking about, can I get hold of some non-KYC Bitcoin in some way? And you actively have to do that. You can't passively do it, I guess, unless you set up mining. But obviously it's active at first until you've got it set up. But
Not
yeah,
financial advice.
Not financial advice at all. But I think that's probably the smartest thing for most people to do, rather than being like getting overwhelmed and being like, oh my God, I need to, like, all of this Bitcoin that I've got, there's all KYC, this means I'm all screwed. And, then.
Yeah, I got a mate of mine who wants to get into it, but it's hard to like give him advice because, he's big into privacy. It wants to be as private as possible, but he's never got into Bitcoin before. So, in fact, you met him at the last meetup.
Yeah,
and
thought so.
He was like, right, so I need to start running a node, and then I need to set up BISC, and I'm thinking
it's too much to think about all at once.
It's like, bro, you don't even understand the basics yet. Like,
yeah, I think just set up account on any.
Set up an account, make a transaction. Like, exactly. Don't worry about it.
Because otherwise, it's like analysis paralysis. You just end up doing nothing, and it's overwhelm. I think that's what all of this can be, depending on what stage of the journey you're on, sort of thing.
Yeah, and then you just don't. Exactly, it's like you end up not doing anything because you're like, well, I need to set up a node and I need to do this, but it's baby steps. But like,
yeah, I mean, I've had a Bitax miner sat there for like 2 months.
it's walk in its box. Walk before you can run, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, make a transaction first before going too deep. Or even like, I mean, the first hardware wallet I got was Ledger, but I like Bitbox now. But going in and using something like a seed sign or a cold card first, like, that would be, that's tough work. Just understand a easy to use.
Are you still using the Bitbox?
Yeah, that's what I use now.
Yeah, it does make it makes it simple, doesn't it? I think that's the thing.
Yeah, and it's I like it as well because it's open source, whereas with Ledger it's not. So it's like, well, you don't know what kind of data that they're collecting, and I've heard all kinds of dodgy stuff about Ledger Live and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. In fact, just you saying that though, it has made me think that like, even like I was saying, so there was not wanting to sort of work with Kata and things is like, but actually for the vast majority of people, that's still significantly better than whatever it is they do. Even if they have it on a Ledger or a Trezor or whatever wallet it is, it's still significantly better than holding it on an exchange. So I think sometimes the complexity of the best way to hold it, again, it's overwhelm. It's too much for some people.
Exactly. Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, it's walk before you can run. It's the same as running a node. It's like, would you run NOTs or Core, or which version of Core? It's like, well, running any node is better than.
and then this is what I've been finding from the whole debate as well, is that it is making people be like, yeah, but I don't know which one to do now. It's like, just run.
It's like, well, just run one and then work from there. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, should we continue with this?
Yeah.
No single entity is relied upon for maintaining the ledger, and no single individual can alter the record on it without the consent of a majority of network members. What determines the validity of the transaction is not the word of a single authority, but the software running the individual nodes on the network. Ralph Merkle, inventor of the Merkle tree data structure, which is utilized by Bitcoin to record transactions, had a remarkable way of describing Bitcoin. Quote, Bitcoin is the first example of a new form of life. It lives and breathes on the internet. It lives because it can pay people to keep it alive. It lives because it performs a useful service that people will pay it to perform. It lives because anyone, anywhere can run a copy of its code. It lives because all the running copies are constantly talking to each other. It lives because if any one copy is corrupted, it is discarded quickly and without any fuss or muss. It lives because it is radically transparent. Anyone can see its code and see exactly what it does. It can't be changed. It can't be argued with. It can't be tampered with. It can't be corrupted. It can't be stopped. It can't even be interrupted. If nuclear war destroyed half of our planet, it would continue to live uncorrupted. It would continue to offer its services. It would continue to pay people to keep it alive. The only way to shut it down is to kill every server that hosts it, which is hard because a lot of servers host it in a lot of countries, and a lot of people want to use it. Realistically, the only way to kill it is to make the service it offers so useless and obsolete that no one wants to use it, so obsolete that no one wants to pay for it, no one wants to host it. Then it will have no money to pay anyone. Then it will starve to death. But as long as there are people who want to use it, it's very hard to kill or corrupt or stop or interrupt. End quote. Bitcoin is a technology that survives for the very same reason the wheel, knife, phone, or any technology survives. It offers its users benefits from using it. Users, miners, and node operators are all rewarded economically from interacting with Bitcoin, and that is what keeps it going. It's worth adding that all the parties that make Bitcoin work are individually dispensable to its operation. Nobody is essential to Bitcoin, and if anybody wants to alter Bitcoin, Bitcoin is perfectly capable of continuing to operate as it is without whatever input anyone has on this. This will help us understand the immutable nature of Bitcoin in Chapter 10, and why attempts at making serious changes to the Bitcoin code will almost inevitably lead to the creation of a knockoff version of Bitcoin, but one that cannot possibly recreate the economic balance of incentives that keeps Bitcoin operational and immutable. Bitcoin can also be understood as a spontaneously emergent and autonomous firm which provides a new form of money and a new payments network. There is no management or corporate structure to this firm, as all decisions are automated and pre-programmed. Volunteer coders in an open source project can present changes and improvements to the code, but it is up to users to choose to adopt them or not. The value proposition of this firm is that its money supply is completely inelastic in response to increased demand and price. Instead, increased demand just leads to a safer network due to the mining difficulty adjustment. Miners invest electricity and processing power in the mining infrastructure that protects the network because they are rewarded for it. Bitcoin users pay transaction fees and buy the coins from the miners because they want to utilize digital cash and benefit from the appreciation over time, and in the process they finance the miners' investment in operating the network. The investment in proof-of-work mining hardware makes the network more secure and can be understood as the firm's capital. The more the demand for the network grows, the more valuable the miners' rewards and transaction fees become, which necessitates more processing power to generate new coins, increasing the company's capital, making the network more secure and the coins harder to produce. It is an economic arrangement that has been productive and lucrative to everyone involved, which in turn leads to the network continuing to grow at an astonishing pace. With this technological design, Nakamoto was able to invent digital scarcity. Bitcoin is the first example of a digital good that is scarce and cannot be reproduced indefinitely. While it is trivial to send a digital object from one location to another in a digital network, as is done with email, text messaging, or file downloads, it is more accurate to describe these processes as copying rather than sending, because the digital objects remain with the sender and can be reproduced infinitely. Bitcoin is the first example of a digital good whose transfer stops it from being owned by the sender, i.e., solve the double spend problem. Beyond digital scarcity, Bitcoin is also the first example of absolute scarcity. the only liquid commodity, digital or physical, with a set fixed quantity that cannot conceivably be increased. Until the invention of Bitcoin, scarcity was always relative, never absolute. It is a common misconception to imagine that any physical good is finite or absolutely scarce, because the limit on the quantity we can produce of any good is never its prevalence in the planet, but the effort and time dedicated to producing it. With its absolute scarcity, Bitcoin is highly saleable across time. This is a critical point which will be explicated further in Chapter 9 on Bitcoin's role as a store of value. And there we go. The first ever digitally scarce, absolutely digital scarce thing to exist ever. And the first...
I think helium is one of the only other things that is actually scarce, I believe.
Really?
Have I made that up? Yeah, I'm sure I've found that out before, but obviously you can't go and pay anything with helium.
Can you not make helium?
I don't know. I just sure I've heard that before, but now I'm like, I don't know. I don't know where I heard that from. I'm sure it's something like helium anyway. If it's not helium,
Even if we used helium as a medium of exchange, we'd still struggle with inflation. There's a little joke there.
what was that? Say that again. Sorry, I was just reading about helium.
even if we used helium as a form of money, we'd still struggle with inflation. It's a balloon joke. That was awful.
It's a very good joke.
We'll probably end on that point.
Apparently there was a shortage, but it officially ended in early 2024. So maybe it's not. I don't know. I'm just sure I've heard that somewhere before. I thought it was genuinely... Yeah, it's finite on Earth, recovered only in a few locations, being depleted faster than produced. And for many applications...
How do they know it's finite?
There's no substitute. Exactly. How do you know?
This is the thing. It's like that the whole black swan thing. It's like...
Yeah, like a meteor hits the Earth and comes with a load of helium.
It's like, right, helium's found in only a few locations until they find another location. Yeah.
Up to 50% of extracted helium is lost before it can be used because helium atoms are so light they escape even from specifically designed tanks. That's interesting. The acute shortage crisis ended, but the era of cheap helium is probably gone due to fundamental supply constraints. But I mean, how many times have they said similar things about oil?
True.
I mean, even gold is supposed to be harder and harder. But I mean, gold keeps doubling every 60 years. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, everything. If there's enough of an incentive, like as with oil, they'll find a way. I remember reading this book, actually. What was it called? It might have been Peak Prosperity or something. That's a good book on just other stuff. But I'm sure he talked about peak oil was going to happen in some time in early 2020s. And obviously that hasn't happened because obviously fracking didn't exist when he wrote the book. Mm-hmm. And then they just create a new technology or a new way of extracting the oil. Because he was saying that basically the deeper that they go, you have to spend more oil to go deeper. So it will get to a stage where it will cost more oil than it would to produce it, is what he was saying. And then there would be a decline of oil and there'd be a scarcity of it and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, they just keep finding more and more places as well, don't they? And keep, because there's such a huge incentive to find oil. But
yeah, I doubt oil is finite.
Well, no, I think it's kind of been proven now. Well, unless...
Yeah. And, this idea of like oil is like old Tyrannosaurus Rex bones. It's just like that's got to be some kind of fake narrative that.
I forgot about that one.
just to sell. It's like, oh yeah, well, it's finite. It was made from dinosaur bones. Now, even though we've got fossils, it's not. This one has turned into oil for some reason, and so there was only. That's it. Once we've got the dinosaur juice out the floor, but so you have to pay for it. You have to pay loads of money for it because it's really finite. Same as diamonds. Like the whole I think the family was called like the doubloon family or something like that, where they just created some nonsense narrative to sell diamonds.
Yeah,
And
it's mad, isn't it?
yeah, this yeah.
Madness.
Anyway, that's a whole nother thing.
Cool. Should we finish this one?
We'll call it a day on this one, shall we? Yeah. Next, we've got supply, value, and transactions.
Awesome.
Right then, that'll do. See you next time.
See ya.
Peace.